Welcome, everybody. This is Sally Speaks Mindset Podcast, and I'm really excited today because we have an amazing guest from Minneapolis, right?
You got it. Yeah.
Excellent. This is Merri Guggisberg, and today we're going to talk a little bit about parenting. And so just so you know, the podcast that you're on today is really about allowing people to live the life that they've always chosen to live. I believe that people deserve to create wealth, wellness, and wisdom that they've always desired. And my passion lies in helping people to break through their barriers to success and provide them with the tools to create the dreams and mentor them on how to achieve their goals so that they can have their best life. And my guests, just like Merri, are experts in their field, and I know that you are going to love this session today. She is a parenting coach and educator, like I said, and I've never heard of a parenting coach and educator together. So this is really going to be a really fun event. And she's also a founder of MKG Parent Coach. She helps parents bring mindfulness, kindness, and gratitude to every parent situation. She has more than 20 years experience educating and thriving alongside parents and children in faith and school communities. She helps parents nurture connections with their loved ones and provides empowering strategies for a peaceful and loving home. That sounds like it's joy to me. So when not on FaceTime with her two adult children, you can find Merri and her husband trekking the Minnesota state parks along with their golden-doodle, Kula.
Kula, you got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that the golden-doodle I got wrong. Anyway, it's going to be really fun today because I think there's a lot of people out there that are going through a lot of stress in the home these days. And I don't know what you're finding, but I think because we've got such busy lives, busy schedules, we're all attached to our social media and don't seem that we can go anywhere without that. What are you finding with your clients, or what is the key areas that people are coming to you for and saying, we need help, Merri?
Yeah. First off, thanks. Super fun to be with you and love that I get the opportunity to share about MKG Parent Coach with you. Sally, it also, I would say, if I can't show up for my kiddos, my loved ones at home, how am I bringing my best self to my work? So I love that we'll just step back just real quick to say, here's a reason why it's great that people jump into our call today. What am I seeing for parents? Parents are stressed. Parents, unfortunately, there's so much comparison. Well, I'm trying to make sure my kid has the same experience as the neighbor's kid. And we really want to, my mission that helping parents bring mindfulness, kindness, and gratitude is giving parents the tools to show up first for themselves. You know, that whole put your own oxygen mask on first. And then show up for your loved ones. Help them with walking through those life transitions, those big transitions. I mean, even a small transition, school to summer. I think there's so much happening and things are going at a record pace. You are correct. Devices make it at a record pace. But I also like to incorporate devices as how we can use them in our connections.
Nice.
Yeah,
so tell me more about that. How are you coaching people on how to use them to connect more?
Yeah, so I have lots of clients who have said it's the best way to connect with my adolescent boy, my son. And that's where they're having versus that face-to-face dialogue, they're connecting this way. I always remind parents that we have to model. How much time am I spending on that device? How am I using that device to better my family schedule? Some of the things we talk about for summer is creating a summer bucket list. Well, it means I'm putting those things right on the calendar that the family has sat around the dinner table and said, I really want to make sure we make it to this amusement park. Okay, guys, pull out your calendars. When are we going to make it? And we're using those devices to schedule that time versus, oh, yeah, we'll get to that. And then suddenly it's back to school time and we're like, oh, no, we missed it.
Excellent. I think that's a great idea because I think, you know, as you have the different ages at home as well, there's going to be a lot of different variances amongst their desires, number one, on what they want to do, and things that some younger ones might not want to do that the adolescents will want to do, and vice versa. So to have a schedule in everybody's calendar on their phone is, it's almost like put the reminders on, right? To be able to actually have those things planned. And now talking about summer, what about the ones that are working, parents that are working, now they've got to find out all these arrangements. How do you help them with managing through that piece?
Yeah, so it starts with a schedule, and I'm a big believer. You should see my workspace. I'm a paper and pencil kind of scheduler, but then I also use my device. So for youngers, I would say that big calendar, like having an actual calendar, and Sunday night, Friday afternoon, whatever is your best time to sit with your kiddos and say, hey, you have camp next week. And here's where you're going to go. Here's where you need to, what do you need to pack? So they're making it a conversation so that they're all together, building those skills of planning ahead. So again, paper calendar, or if your kiddos are older and they have a work schedule, and then they're putting their work schedule on that family calendar. So I know that you're going to be home for dinner tonight versus where are you? When are you getting home? It's it removes so many could be conflicts, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to those youngers, I love when you talked about the schedule is having that similar wake and sleep schedule as they would during the school year. Their brains and bodies are so active right now. They're growing, right?
Yeah.
And keeping them on that bit of a routine can help remove some of those challenging times. It also helps our kids transition from one event to the next when they know what's coming, when they have that idea of those expectations.
Yeah.
Can I add one more thing with that?
Sure, absolutely.
With schedules, though, it's summer. Stay flexible. That's so important for our kids to go, oh, we were going to go and do the park today, but it's pouring rain. Or here in Minnesota, it's supposed to get super hot. Okay, we're going to take and do an indoor park, or we're going to flip flop. And today we're going to go to the water park instead of the play park. You hear I'm going, you just have to have some flexibility in it.
Awesome. I think that's a really important piece, because I think oftentimes, like, I don't remember having a calendar for my son, but there was just one, so it was a little easier to manage, but I would always let him know what to expect for that day. And I noticed that you were saying, so then they know what to get ready for the day, etc. Are you a proponent of the children getting their own lunches? I'm just curious, getting their lunches created themselves as opposed to mom or dad doing that? Like, what are the things that you would give as far as some responsibility to the children?
Right. Thank you. So yeah, I created a chore list because your question is exactly what parents are asking. Well, I have a 8-year-old. Can they fill in the blank? Can they vacuum? Can they dust? Can they make their own bed? Can they help with laundry? So I think a helpful tool is this chore list, and I break it preschool, elementary, middle, and then high school. And obviously everything grows on itself. Think of how good we feel when we've accomplished something. Our kids have that same thing, like, wow, I could, collect everybody's laundry and sort the colors, and, mom double checks before they go in, or dad's helping with the laundry and the cooking. And it just gives that self-confidence, because that's truly one thing that parents really come to me for, is they say, my kiddo they don't have confidence in themselves. And I'm a big believer that does start at home with those little steps. My preschooler can help me. I guess I'm stuck on laundry right now. My preschooler can help me sort the laundry. My preschooler can help me measure out when I'm baking. My preschooler can help. And it just keeps graduating as they get older. Okay. So yeah, a chore list to help with those responsibilities, I think, removes can they really do that? It helps us move past that.
Okay. And do you have a link to that we can post up with the?
Yes, I will happily share that with you.
Okay, perfect.
Or people can email me too. I will happily share it that way too.
Okay, awesome. So we'll have all that information when we post this up. So that's great. Because I think there's a lot of people that are out there, and, we've all been raised, usually husbands and wives aren't raised by the same parents, and they come from different backgrounds and different siblings. So it's great when we get together to sort of come together as a family with a similar expectation on how we're going to run our family and what we're going to offer to the children. Because I think a lot of conflict oftentimes starts with the parents on how they were raised and what their values and systems are. So I think this is going to be one way to sort of take that pressure off of the family. If there's, you know, an outside party like yourself coming in and say, hey, try this, see how this works for your family, and then helps to, you know, alleviate a lot of that parental tension that can happen, because we all know what happens.
Right. And Sally, you named something that's really important to call out too, is the communication part, so that the parents themselves are sitting together and having that dialogue. Well, in my house, mom did all of this. Well, in my house, my dad did all of that. And having that conversation to say, how do we want to do it? And really diving in. This is one thing I love getting to coach parents on, is guiding them to learn how to listen, to understand, not to respond.
Yeah,
Our kiddos, our partners, and when we get that ripples into all of our relationships, whether that's peers, in our friend circles, in our work, definitely with our children and our co-parents. When we listen to understand, not to respond, it's a life skill. It truly is.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I understand that you also bring mindset or mindfulness into your practice. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. So every session starts with a mindfulness activity, and I'm going to give you a really fast one if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So what I love starting with, whether it's in a coaching call or an education call, is giving that fast. It depends on what topic the family is surfacing for the call for the day, but incorporating that healthy mindfulness. And what I'd love to share is, we take so many things for granted, and there's an opportunity to slow down. I call it practicing the pause, and just slow down. And I'm going to be mindful in my appreciation. And just take for a second, what is 1, 2, 3 things that you just, really you take for granted? It goes unappreciated. And it could be the barista who made your coffee this morning. It could be my commute in was so smooth, or the weather, the sun is shining. I mean, things that we just take for granted. And then having that moment to pause and just be like, oh, did I tell the barista thank you? Did I let my kiddos know, I am so excited the sun is shining today. We get to do this. And it's just that appreciation that for this moment. Yeah. Practicing that mindfulness to just slow down. And then after we pause and we step into that, then I invite the parents that I get to coach to say, now, how can you share this with your kiddo? And it could be around the dinner table. Everybody, what's one thing that it seems like you take for granted? And you might be surprised. The kiddos might say, we have dinner tonight and it's my favorite meal. Or it might be, I get to try something new. Or this kiddo I met at camp today. Fill in the blank. But it increases that practicing that mindfulness for this moment.
Yeah, I think there's so many things that happen in our day that we don't, like you said, stop to take a breath and just recognize what it is.
Exactly. We just move at such a fast pace.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just appreciate the simple things, right? The simple things is all it takes. Like,
right.
There's a hummingbird that flies by and you saw it and you got to see it, or a butterfly comes and lands on a flower right beside where you are. Just those little things can make all the difference if you just stop and recognize how incredible the world really is.
Exactly. And then that moves into that practicing kindness and gratitude, right? That M, the K, the G. So thanks.
Okay. So now I understand you have a practice called pause. Is that what we've been talking about right now? Do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah. So I would say pause is that opportunity. So it's an acronym. It's easy to remember. It's being present. And how I told you when we started, it's putting that oxygen mask on for yourself. So what am I, parent, caregiver? What am I feeling? And then how do I, be attentive to my loved ones? Or what are they feeling? What are their needs right now? So every feeling equals a need. And then the U is understand, right? It's that listening to understand. We talked about that. And sometimes the S is support. And sometimes we need to make that circle bigger. So who is in your village? who's in your village for you, caregiver, and then who do you need to invite in for your kiddo? And then the E is explore solutions together. How can we as a family, I talked about that summer bucket list. How are we creating this and how are we going to explore? Oh, everybody's ideas are all across the board. All right, how do we explore solutions together? Because Sally, I really want to do what you want to do too.
Yeah.
And I want to honor my other kiddos too, or my partner, and my own. I may have my own. So it's exploring together. So that was the really fast touch on pause.
That's awesome, because I think, it's a great acronym to use. And I love the first one because being present is really hard for people these days.
Right.
We're constantly thinking, we're constantly moving. We're not actually just stopping especially when a child comes up to you, one of your children comes up, or kiddos, comes up to you and wants to tell you something, but you're so busy doing 6 other things that we don't feel like we've taken the time to actually pause and have that present moment with that child, just focusing on them for that 30 seconds or whatever they're going to need to be able to get that off of their chest and get your attention. And I see that a lot, especially when you're out and about and we're in stores shopping or things like that. I see a lot of lack of presence with our children when we're out and about. So, I think that's a really good thing that you've started with, was the P, because it's so needed today for us to be present face to face, eyeball to eyeball, and just really putting our full attention on our child so that we can understand, and even on our spouses or friends. I think it's great for everybody, but we really don't have a lot of presence these days.
Right.
That's my perception.
So I agree completely. I like to use the phrase, love the one you're with. If we're sitting at the table or my kiddo walks in, put this away. Those 18 years may seem like it's going to be a long time that they're in your home, but it goes like that. Especially now, I can tell you, my kiddos are young adults and they're gone. So it flies, it just flies. And it's, when you're deep in it, it doesn't feel like there's light, but it does go fast. And what makes it smoother is that being present, checking in with yourself so you can check in with your loved ones.
Well, and one thing I know is that the child's mind is so open and just accepts whatever comes to them before the age of 12. Whatever we tell them, it gets implanted, and they don't have the ability to think differently than what they're being told. So it's really important, especially in those early years, to be very present, to allow them to have their voice, but also to be able to guide them in a way that's going to be effective for the rest of their life. So they're not having to try to correct their behaviors when they're 30, 40, 50, and even 60 or beyond, right? Those behaviors that we picked up from when we were younger. So I really like that piece of the puzzle that you've put together in your program. So now, so you've talked a little bit about why some parents come to you, but what are some of the other reasons why parents would come to you to be able to get support?
Yeah, parents are tired and they're just not sure if whatever situation they're walking in is they're handling it to the best of their ability that is empowering their child to be the best they can be. So I have clients that come because their kiddos are doing gender identity questioning. I have parents that I get to support on that. I have parents that come with there is so much yelling in my house that I literally go to bed at night almost in tears because I'm feeding it. I yell to be heard, and they don't want that relationship. They want their kiddos to feel safe coming to them. That's one goal many parents say is, I want my kiddos to know that they can tell me anything and I'm there for them. Well, if there's such tension of yelling in the home, it's a little hard to think your kiddo is going to confide in you.
Yeah. Okay. So typically, do you do one-on-one counseling with parents, or do you do group counseling, or both?
I do both. So everything for the coaching side is through the screen, like we're doing right now, whether it's, I've had groups up to 6, I've had groups of husband or co-parents doing it. And I do a lot of individual coaching, whether it's the mom or the dad, or again, co-parents individually coming. And the group coaching, I set a time, and then they jump into the call. What happens is it's a 1-hour call. What happens I have found works great, especially for my individual coaching, is we meet 1 week and then they have a week to implement what we have walked through. Like they might come with this parenting situation that their heart is hurting, it's heavy. And now they have a week to practice those strategies that they came up with my guidance. And then we come back and we revisit, and then we walk into the next situation. And I have a 6 week, 6 week, or 12. And what has been happening is people jump through that 6 week to just touch their toe in, and then they sign immediately for the 12.
Yeah.
And then they move into a maintenance. So people just stay because they're like, Merri, I need you.
Yeah.
The situations my kiddo's walking in, it's so different than the world I grew up in. I need your support because.
Yeah. Well, it is a lot different today than it was even 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 or 40 years ago.
Exactly.
So that which just makes me think, what about adult children?
Yeah.
Are you working with parents of adult children?
Right. Thank you. That's exactly, because okay, now I'm coaching myself, right? Because I have my own adult children. But I would say and yes, I definitely have clients that have come and said, how do I maintain the relationship I had with my kiddo or rebuild it? So we walk through those situations and just really showing up with that listening, non-judgmental ear is one of the best things all of us can do. My daughter might be parenting her own children different than I wanted. Come alongside and learn. She might have a life partner that I'm like, wow, you guys are really navigating the world different than I saw. But again, showing up with that non-judgmental curiosity, just being there shows your kiddos that you love them for who they are.
Okay.
I had one more thing I wanted to share is I've also been getting requests because parents are in that sandwich generation.
Yes.
They are raising their middle schoolers and caring for their aging parents. And how do I put my own oxygen mask on? How do I care for myself when I have these two different? So that has been a new learning for me too, to help support parents and come alongside in that journey as well.
Yeah, I know a lot of people in my generation are doing the same thing where, the parents are at that stage where maybe one has passed on, or maybe they're both getting, a little bit harder to move and they need more support, and you end up not only looking after your own family, but your parents as well. And so it is a very taxing, because it takes a lot of time to manage that. And because what I've discovered anyways from myself and my friends was that as our parents age, there's almost an expectation there that we're going to be there showing up to make sure that they're okay. But we also want to be there to show up that they're okay, but yet we're taking away from our own lives. And, when you have spouses, that means there's probably a number of different parents that you're trying to look after. And that balancing that can be quite difficult.
Exactly. And don't forget, what if my parents had me when they were older, and now I have a toddler, I have fill in the age demographic of our own kiddos, and you're trying to wear a mom hat and a daughter hat. So it's, and maybe you're the caregiver, and maybe they've moved into your home, and now you're trying to care for your child's grandparent and your child. It can be, what makes me think of is one of my clients said, when I asked her, I'm like, what do you do for self-care? And this client said, Merri, you just said a foreign word to me. And then I'm like, okay, that's moving up in our priority of what we're going to work through, because you can't pour from an empty cup. We got to be able to take care of ourselves so that we can share our love and care for those that we're blessed to be around.
Yeah, I can see that. I have a friend that's going through all sorts of things like that, where, one of her children is breaking up with the spouse, and then yet they're moving house. She's looking after her parents, and her husband needs some care too. And it's like, she's exhausted, and she's working full time. So she's exhausted, being pulled in all these different directions and not taking time for herself, because there is no time. There seems to be nothing left. So it can be a real big challenge. And so I
Right.
appreciate the work that you're doing with people.
Thank you. Thank you. If
Mhm.
I could guide for your friend, I would say
Mhm.
then we use that letter S in our pause, right? Who's in your support network? Who is in that circle of care so that you can have an opportunity to just sit with a cup of tea. Let's take a moment to
Mhm.
just be and not race to everything.
Yeah.
And that little moment is self-care.
Mhm.
It's important.
Yeah, and I think we were hesitant to get outside support for the people that need the support,
Yeah.
feeling that we owe it to them, that we're the daughter, or we're the mother, or we're the father, or we're the son, whatever it might be, that we owe it
Right.
to them. When really there's a lot of support mechanisms out there to be able to help us with a lot of those elements. So
Yeah.
is that something you address as well during your coaching?
Well, and yeah, because you know what? It's that circle of care is helping the client unpack, like, these are my needs, these are their needs, and how do we find the support in between?
Mhm.
I use what's called empowered conversations. Everyone has their feelings and needs. And when you do this, I feel this because I need, and now what can we do together? So it is having that conversation to say, wow, maybe it's time for us to hire a babysitter. I mean, let's go that way, right?
Yeah,
And we can
yeah.
just go for a date night, or maybe for my career, I want to go to a conference and I need to have that kind of help. So
Mhm.
it is feeling comfortable to know that you've done your homework so that you're not leaving your child with someone you don't feel safe, and you're doing something for yourself.
Mhm. Okay, so one other situation just came to mind.
Yeah,
as well,
please.
too. So what happens in situations where maybe one of the parents or one of the children gets critically ill, and they don't know what to do? The spouse, if one of them is sick, the other one is taking on all the responsibility, and the children take on more responsibility, and vice versa. If the children are sick, then the parents dedicate their time, and usually one is there all the time while the other is trying to still pay the bills, right? So what are your tips for situations such as that?
Yeah, that's where I would say, especially if it's an illness, a physical illness. I mean, mental health illnesses are the same.
Mhm.
It's doing your research of who's in your area. So in the Twin Cities, I have a file plus of resources. And if the client is coming to me from across the globe, I would say, here's what I recommend in my neighborhood. Let's find the similar in yours. So that
Okay.
we are getting those, whether it's a nursing care that's coming into the home,
Mhm.
whether we talk mental illness, mental health needs, resources like NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. Again, I have a list of plus in the Twin Cities, so the Minneapolis, St. Paul. And as soon as we start peeling layers back, we're like, oh, well, we have that in Philadelphia also. We have that I have clients in London. I mean, we have this, but you just, until you open the door for conversation,
Mhm.
it stays there until you're like, I didn't even know that's one of the things that I could explore.
That's great, because I think there's a lot of elements like that in our lives, and we don't know where to turn, right? Because let's say it's a medical issue, we only hear from the medical associations, we don't hear from outside, but yet there's so many great support groups out there and organizations that we can tap into. So that's wonderful that you have an understanding of what they are, so that you can actually help your clients to determine if there's anything available for them, which is huge.
Very true.
So very great as far as being able to find ways to navigate the different paths that come up, because we all have different paths that come up at certain times in our life. And now I noticed you talked about the co-parenting at one point.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the co-parenting, and is it usually the two parents that are coming back to want to find out a way to co-parent, or is there usually one saying, okay, this isn't working, we need to make it happen, and working with that? I'm sure you have both, but tell me a little bit more about your process for that.
That is a great question, because sometimes you get in the call and what I request is that they both are in their own Zoom accounts. So they're not typically in the same room. So it's kind of like a group coaching, but it's a co-parent, right?
Mhm.
And one is because of sound. Unfortunately, the systems, if you're sitting shoulder to shoulder, you don't hear as well.
Mhm.
But it also it removes that barrier of, I didn't like how my partner did this situation with bedtime last night. Well, if
Mhm.
they're across the hall in a different room, they feel a little more comfortable to say, and then what happens, that walk through the situation, and one person might get very defensive,
Mhm.
or they might be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize. So it
Mhm.
is having that third voice to be that non-judgmental listening ear. And I get to be like, well, I wonder how your kiddo felt when this happened. I
Mhm.
wonder what this is like. And we just literally navigate. Okay, now let's do a role play. And
Mhm.
it gives them that opportunity to be like, sometimes I see deer in the headlights, like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, I
for
had
sure.
right, no idea that that's how my kiddo heard that, or that's how you heard that, because we perceive what we're saying, right?
Mhm.
It is
Mhm.
that opportunity. I'm going back to the pause, right? It's that opportunity to step into, I get to be present with how I'm feeling, so my kiddo,
Mhm.
and practice that empathy. I mean, we walk through, you can imagine in 12 weeks, we cover a lot of different
Mhm.
emotions and strategies to build that toolkit.
Mhm. Now, what about in the situation of divorce, where the kids are going back and forth from home to home, or maybe just staying in one home and not really
Yeah.
seeing the other parent? Are there opportunities to do the same for them?
Yeah. And it's working on that collaboration. It's working
Mhm.
on how
Mhm.
do we find those solutions together. I have not had where they both jump into the same call.
Yeah.
That's an
Okay.
individual. But then they have those curiosity we can talk through, and it works. It does work.
Mhm.
It builds that understanding that we love this child, and what can we do to show up and be the best for this child.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, because I think that's, a big, I've recognized a lot of people struggling through that.
Yeah.
Because, obviously they had something between them that caused them not to respect or like, or
Yeah.
whatever situation it might be.
Mhm.
And yet they want to protect their children.
Right.
Because they
Right.
don't want them to go through the same thing or that have that same experience with that person. So I think it can be a little bit of a hotbed at times, I'm sure, for
Certainly.
coaching. But
Yeah.
I like that you're doing them separately, but yet still bringing them together based off of what
Mhm.
their needs are as a couple and for the children. But the children really is the center of the whole thing.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The kiddos are what we're here for, right? We're going to empower the parents to be the best they can be, to have help that next generation.
Mhm. Now, do you ever bring the children into the mix as far as working with them?
You are asking amazing questions, and you are that I just had a request for this. Typically, yes, I would have said I only coach parents, but this family, we actually are exploring a call with the parents first. We're going to do a couple sessions, just the parents. And then they want to bring in, I think the kiddo is 8 or 9, and then they want to do the 3 of us together.
Mhm.
But we have to first have that foundation before
Yes.
we invite in that child. And now the parents are like, oh, I get to hear my kiddo in a different light.
Mm.
And then we're going to explore. And what I'm going to use is those empowered conversation. That's based on Marshall Rosenberg's work around nonviolent communication, that every feeling equals a need. And it's helping my kiddos name their emotions. I wasn't taught how to name my emotions when I was a child. And having those, even just a chart, this is how I feel. I mean, we can start this when our kiddos super young all the way through adults, because sadly, a lot of us didn't learn how to name our emotions, and what does that even mean? So
Yeah. And then also how to respond to them accordingly,
yes,
right?
yes,
Because
bless
what
you.
I've noticed in the coaching that I do, because I coach people on all sorts of different things, but a lot with, talking about their paradigms that they've been raised with, because it's an automatic emotion that shows up based off of a past experience to a similar situation. And so when I'm working with people as well, it's very interesting because I can see that response and the emotion that comes forward with it, but they don't necessarily identify it as that. And so I've recognized even in myself through my behaviors, it's like, oh, I'm responding in a way that was triggered from way back here. I get a choice now to change that. But
Yes.
that recognition is one of the first steps along that path. And I think that's wonderful what you're doing to allow the children to understand it from the get-go, and the parents to understand the impact that that can have to be able to move forward.
You're so correct.
So
So
that's
very
awesome.
correct. I had a parent one time say, I wish I would have learned this when I was a kiddo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it shows up when it's supposed to show up, I guess, for us to learn, right?
There,
When the student's
exactly.
ready, they say the teacher shows up. So I think
Exactly.
that, I understand why we go through what we go through, and we can't control everything when we're younger. But at the same time, the parents now have more education by working with you, to actually think about the pause and all the elements of pause, to be able to actually change that dynamic for the future. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of what you're doing. And I really appreciate everything that you've talked about today. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about as far as how your practice works and the type of work that you get to do? Because it's just beautiful what you're doing.
Bless you. Thank you. And I am honored to learn family stories. The only thing that we didn't talk about is that education part that I do.
Perfect.
And I do those in person many times, but we're across the globe. We're not neighbors.
Yeah.
We're neighbors, but we're not neighbors, right? So I also have clients that I do with corporate, and I jump into just what we're doing right now. I have a PowerPoint I run, and then we use the chat as our way. Not necessarily a webinar, because they can come off mic and they can talk to me. It's usually 45 minutes with 15 minutes of Q&A time. It's so fun, so very fun. The topics range from social media, like how do I set boundaries around social media? Let me think of some of my other topics. Wow, I should have my list in front of me. Those empowered conversations, family values. And at holiday time, I have one that's called Holiday Harmony. And then how do we practice that care for ourselves so that we can just have some more harmonious time when our kiddos are home from school break? So I have a whole list of those on my website.
Excellent. So check out her website. We'll post that as well. But I love the Holiday Harmony, because I think, from when we were children, well, I'm older than you, I believe, but when we were children, it was a little different than it is today. We wouldn't get as many gifts. We'd have a simpler process. It was certainly around spending time with family, which it happens a lot today. But I think there's a lot more tension because of the expectation around presents and all of the, satisfying people or going to people's homes when they don't even feel comfortable in those homes. So that kind of piece, is there a lot of coaching you do around special events or special holidays?
Yes, all of that. Yes. And that I have actually just had a request to write a presentation around raising entitled kids. When you talked about presents, that made me think of that one. So that would be another topic that would really, like, how do we help our kids feel grateful for have, and not do that comparison thing of what's happening across the way. So
yeah, awesome. Well, I think there's so many stories to be told by the children and the parents. And I think today, it's a lot more acceptable to be able to reach out to somebody when you're struggling with your communication with your family, because at the end of the day, it's about creating the most joyful home that you can, the most positive experience for your family, so that they can go out and enjoy the world with all of the goodness that there is to explore. And I really appreciate the work that you do, because families are at the root of everything. They are the root of everything in our world. And that family bond starts with the parents. Right.
Exactly. And then the importance of practicing grace, being graceful to yourself, because like you said, there is so much happening, and it's okay to say, I do need some guidance. I don't have this all figured out. And then letting your kiddo know you don't have it all figured out. Pretty sure they know that you're human. So let's live that we're humans.
I love that. Yes, we are humans.
Yes.
None of us know how to be a parent once we have that baby, and all of a sudden this beautiful little creatures in your arms, and you're feeling the most love you've ever felt in your life. And now all you want to do is protect and make sure that this child has everything they want. And so we do give of ourselves and we do give our time, but then children become children and we don't know how to deal with them in certain circumstances. And we are so busy in our lives, just living our lives as well, that it's a real time constraint now, especially with working parents. And, you know, I've been there, I've worked my whole life as well. And my husband was out of town for work and almost all of our child's life. But, you know, we made it work. We made it work, and, you know, he's doing well. He's he's probably the same age range as your son. And, but he's even identifying other people's backgrounds from the conversations he's having with other friends on what happened in their home versus what happened in our home. And so they're talking about it. These 20-somethings are talking about it. And I like that because it's allowing them to actually say, this is what my experience was, what's your experience? And I love that because it allows them to be aware of what other options there are. So as they go to be parents, they will be more curious on how they can actually change and make a difference for their children. And so your name's going to be the one I'm referring to everybody, Merri.
I love it. Thank you. Please do. Please do. I love being it's a blessing to me to be able to walk along and just share in the journey of parenting. And I appreciate when you said our kiddos are talking about this, and they are not afraid to ask for support. They're not afraid. I didn't get an instruction manual. Pretty sure you didn't either when we brought those babies home. But isn't it great to know that, I mean, we do have support all across the world. I mean, it's not just call grandma. We have a lot of support.
Yeah, there is a lot of support. And there's lots of experts like yourself that have systems as well to make it easy for us to follow. And you know, I'm a big proponent of systems because when you have something that's easy for you to follow to get to the results that you're looking for, it just makes our life less complicated.
Exactly.
It's keep it simple. Silly is the one you need to use, and it really does work. And using the strategies that you have aligns exactly with that. So brilliant work that you're doing. And I really appreciate you joining us today. If you're wanting to connect with Merri, she has a website. The website is?
It's the business name, MKG. So it's www.mkgparentcoach.com. You'll find me.
Excellent. And we will put all those links along with the podcast. So make sure that you reach out to Merri. She's, as you can tell, a very kind, beautiful soul, very soft-spoken. So she's really good at just making you calm when you might not be as calm when you get on the phone with her or on a Zoom. But definitely I can tell that she offers amazing support for families worldwide. And I really, really appreciated the conversation today. What a great service that you're offering. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you. It's been my honor. Thanks for all you do too, Sally. Appreciate it.
Thank you.